But we begin tonight with reality and a question. The reality is this. After last night, it is officially a Trump versus Biden race. And now the question. It's the one question Trump supporters keep wanting to ask. So, okay, let's ask it. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? You know, the old Ronald Reagan query from the 1980 campaign. Well, 4 years ago, to the day, this was our world.
Breaking news tonight, President Trump declaring the coronavirus a national emergency. The move freeing billions for the fight as America contracts to slow the rapidly spreading pandemic. The number of cases in the U.S. rising to near 2,000, at least 41 deaths, all schools closing in a growing number of states. Millions of students impacted, houses of worship suspending services, landmarks, theme parks, sporting events, and concerts shutting down. The chaos at grocery store lines where they stretch out the door, shelves cleared out.
COVID-19 was officially declared a pandemic exactly 4 years ago, and things haven't been the same since. It was a scary time. And for the long haulers and those with elderly loved ones, it still is 4 years later. What made the outbreak especially dangerous was the fact that America's president at the time, our germaphobe in chief, told reporter Bob Woodward he knew how bad it was, but he didn't tell us. Here's Donald Trump on February 7th, 2020, just 2 days after the Senate voted to acquit him on both articles in his first of 2 impeachment trials.
It goes through air, Bob. That's always tougher than the touch. You know, the touch, you don't have to touch things, right? But the air, you just breathe the air, and that's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
So if Trump said that in February, that means he knew that the virus was a lot more serious than he let on publicly, even before America went into lockdown. But Woodward didn't share that bombshell until 6 months later when his new book came out and after the U.S. surpassed 6 million cases. In all that time, Trump lied to the American people about the dangers of COVID.
It's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
It's fading away. It's going to fade away.
So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that has him in check, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
Wow. Well, as we mark the 4-year anniversary of the pandemic, we must note that since March of 2020, more than 1 million people have died in the U.S. due to COVID. We just need to sit with this number. For the love of God, we should at least remember it. Because history could easily repeat itself in a very bad way. As of last night, Trump and Biden are officially their party's presumptive nominees. So we need to take a hard look at these candidates, their records, their accomplishments, and the choice ahead of us. And yes, where they stand on the safety and well-being of every individual American. We're also in a unique position to evaluate these men because both of them have been president. We can compare their actual presidencies rather than vote based on their promises. Which era do you want to relive? The chaotic, frankly insane 4 years of crazy tweets, migrant kids ripped from their parents' arms, random fights with our allies, and 1 million bodies in the ground due to COVID? The bodies stacked up in refrigerated trucks because the hospitals ran out of room? The states fighting over ventilators, the old people dying by themselves and saying their goodbyes on iPads, the economy literally collapsing and all of us stuck in our homes for a year, kids having to graduate from high school and college on Zoom, or the Biden era, where the president is old, yes, and set in his ways and some of his policies infuriating. But at least he's sane and a grown up and capable of being reasoned with and pushed to change his policies. It is a serious question. Does anybody think that reliving the Trump era is a good idea or something America would even survive? What about the Americans who didn't survive? What would they think? Trump didn't want to deal with a public health catastrophe. He didn't want to take the blame or get bad press. So instead, he spent months pushing crack science, taking advice from snake oil salesmen instead of public health experts. He mainstreamed the anti-vax movement, which is going so strong today that we are facing measles outbreaks among unvaccinated children. RFK Jr. is back, embarrassing his family and running as an anti-vax presidential candidate. Trump turned against vaccines, even though it was his own Operation Warp Speed that spawned the ones for COVID. He elevated extremist politicians like Ron DeSantis, along with junk science and disinformation and horse dewormer, fake COVID cures. And let's face it, the Trump administration fueled the crisis and botched America's response. And that is the main reason he was not reelected. And they knew he would lose because of it. By June of 2020, even Trump knew that his handling of COVID was the reason he was not going to win. So what did he do right before the election? He unleashed Roger Stone, his sleazy friend with the Nixon tattoo on his back, who was later convicted of witness tampering and lying to Congress, to announce the big lie.
Let's just hope we're celebrating. I really do suspect it'll still be up in the air. But when that happens, the key thing to do is to claim victory. Possession is 9/10 of the law. No, we won. You. Sorry, over. We won. Yeah. You're wrong. You.
Joining me now is Matthew Dowd, MSNBC senior political analyst and former Republican strategist, and Dr. Uche Blackstock, founder and CEO of Advancing Health Equity and author of Legacy, A Black Physician Reckons with Racism in Medicine. Thank you both for being here. But Dr. Uche Blackstock, I do want to start with you. As a physician, as a medical professional, how do you feel in your spirit when people literally seem to have forgotten the million COVID dead and try to remember the Trump era as somehow a good time?
Well, Joy, thank you so much for having me on. And watching that compilation of videos was just so incredibly sobering, because I will tell you that that week was the first time in my life I felt scared to go to work. And it wasn't just me, it was all of my colleagues, because we had an uncontrollable virus and a president who could not be controlled and who was not following the public health, the knowledge, the foundation of knowledge that's out there about how viruses spread. And so, it was so incredibly scary. Many of us just, we would get home from work and have to disrobe, and we couldn't even touch our family members. And then at work, we were caring for our very, very sick patients, and they were coming in actually with all different ages, all different medical problems. We were seeing a kind of devastation that we had never, ever seen before, not in our lifetimes, and even our older colleagues had never, ever seen before. So it is so heartbreaking that so many of those deaths could have been prevented if that knowledge had been disseminated and if the virus had been acted on in an evidence-based manner, in a way that we actually knew we had the tools, they just were not rolled out in the way they should have been.
Yeah, let me play, I just want to play this, another piece of Trump. This is Donald Trump. He was talking about trying, Matthew Dowd, to get a ship full of people who might have been impacted by COVID, to keep them on the ship, to keep the number of dead down so that he wouldn't be harmed politically by their deaths. Take a listen.
They would like to have the people come off. I'd rather have the people stay, but I'd go with them. I told them to make the final decision. I would rather, because I like the numbers being where they are. I don't need to have the numbers double because of one ship. That wasn't our fault. And it wasn't the fault of the people on the ship either. Okay? It wasn't their fault either. And they're mostly Americans. So I can live either way with it. I'd rather have them stay on, personally.
Matthew Dowd, you were working in Republican politics back during the George W. Bush era, and I just read a lot of things about George W. Bush. But I can't imagine him saying that. I can't imagine Bill Clinton saying that. I can't imagine George Herbert Walker Bush saying that. I can't imagine Barack Obama or any other American president saying that. I can't even imagine Ronald Reagan saying that. I mean, he really was against him. But the reality is, you know better than any of the rest of us here, having worked at the presidential level, the fiduciary duty of a president is to protect the American people from things like a pandemic. That is when a president is supposed to step up the most. It is when they lead the most and when they're supposed to unite the country. What you just saw there was something other than that. Can you explain to me how, if 9/11 changed all of our lives and the way we travel and everything about our lives when we get on a plane, how is it that people have blown off the fact that Donald Trump utterly failed at that fundamental duty of a president and think he should be president again?
Well, I think this conversation is so important, and it leads us to the bigger part of this conversation, which is the foundations of democracy have actually shaken because of this. Because democracy depends on the idea that we all agree on the common good, that we all agree that there's some common good that our leaders are supposed to actually help achieve based on a common set of facts. Now, George Bush, and I disagreed with him and broke with him after, and broke with him related to the war in the aftermath of that. But George Bush actually believed in the common good of the United States of America, and he actually believed in a common set of facts. How he applied those, we could argue with, and we could debate and all of that. Donald Trump believes in neither one. Donald Trump does not believe in the common good, and Donald Trump does not believe in a common set of facts. And this health issue, you're so right, is one of the primary responsibilities of president is to protect us both from problems within our country and from without our country. And he has his unbelievable narcissism, as that evidenced by that clip, shows that he has no idea or has no even sense that he even wants to do that. And everything he's done since then is a manifestation of that personality trait, or that what he believes in this. And this applies not only to health issues, applies to belief in facts on the economy, and this applies in belief in facts related to global climate change, all of which the Republicans dispute. I mean, they actually think people like Dr. Blackstock are the problem because they actually speak in facts and evidence and all that. And they've decided that they are an anti-science party. That's what they fundamentally decided here. And that shakes our democracy.